Hello, everyone, and welcome to the For My People podcast. I'm your host, Esther Latipo, and I'm here with the fabulous Shauntavia Ward.
Hello.
Y'all know how we do on this podcast. I'm getting straight into it. Today's theme is for my people, specifically creatives that are in the middle of their rediscovery journey.
Yes, I love that.
Yes.
I'm so grateful to be here.
I'm so grateful to have you here, girl.
It is always like my utmost pleasure to share any space with you. So thank you.
Same here. But I want to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself to folks that may not know you, they don't have the pleasure of knowing you yet, but they soon will. But yes, please introduce yourself.
So I'm Shauntavia Ward. I sometimes struggle with this question.
Mm-hmm.
I think that might have just told your listeners everything they need to know about me.
Yes.
No, this is going to be a treat, but I struggle with that question of introducing myself because I think we always lead with what it is that we do. Mm-hmm. And in rediscovering my own identity, I now try to lead with how I'm being, how I'm feeling. And let that sort of create that segue into what it is I do. So I'm Shauntavia. Lately, I have been being in a deep, deep sense of easefulness, gratitude, rest, and acceptance. I'm able to do that because throughout my creative entrepreneurial endeavors in skincare, I own a skincare studio in Austin called Element Skin. I'm also the co-founder of a mental health company, Sensory. I'm able to create those feelings through the companies that I oversee and also the people that I connect with and interact with. So I think more than anything, I am a human who loves, a human who gives, and a human who craves connection, not only to other people, but to myself.
That's beautiful. And I actually wrote a little bio for you, but I'm challenging myself to have the people on my podcast actually introduce themselves.
Oh, I love that.
Especially since I'm planning on interviewing mostly people of color. Mm-hmm. I want people to use their voice, to be seen, to be heard, and to say, I am this.
Yes.
To proclaim that for yourself.
Exactly. It gives them like a moment to declare and to see and accept, who they are and to create that narrative for the world. Because sometimes in the work that we do, it can be perceived differently by multiple people. And anybody could have an idea of what it is that, somebody does. But until you hear it from the horse's mouth, like it's not what, you assume it is. 100%. So I think that's amazing, Esther.
Thank you. And I think your introduction was phenomenal, but I have to give Shauntavia her flowers. Yes, she is someone that is extremely connected in the community, built a lot of opportunities for people, has an amazing facial studio, 5 stars, Google reviews, over 145-star reviews, y'all. I get facials there monthly since like 2018, 2019. Go get you a facial, Element Facial Studio, East Austin. But it's just the way that you love on people, the way that you show up, the way that you call in people with love.
I received that. Yeah. Thank you.
It's contagious.
Thank you.
And I felt it the very moment that I met you. So I'm grateful for our friendship.
We met through Element, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow. That's incredible. I've met so many people through the work, and the people have stayed because of the connection and the love. We have stayed, together in the friendship. So that's amazing.
Together. And together, we're about to dive deep.
Yes, let's do it.
Into this topic. Let's go.
My love language.
Yes.
Depth.
Let's go there. Okay. So I want to talk about Renaissance. Yes, it's a theme with Queen Bee out here.
Okay.
I want to talk about rebirth and rediscovery.
Okay.
So I specifically want to hear from you when you hear those terms of Renaissance, rebirth, rediscovery, as a creative, as an entrepreneur, as a founder, as a connector. What does that mean to you?
It's so interesting. I love Queen Bee. Renaissance has never been a word that I've connected to personally in my life. It's always been in the cultural context of like art, music, different eras. But I love that is the title of her tour, because I think it exposes people to really think about what Renaissance means for them, you know? And to me, it does mean giving myself an opportunity to rediscover how I am connecting with my world at any given point. I didn't always have a relationship with self-discovery or a rebirth, probably into the past maybe 2 to 3 years, and really just sitting with myself, understanding myself, and choosing to change, choosing to be present through traumas and pain, and really just giving myself an opportunity to truly discover myself. And I think that this topic is so timely because I am evolving into the highest version of myself because I allow myself to be reborn. I allow myself to enter into my own renaissance. And if it was not for the permission that I gave myself to do that, we wouldn't be able to have the conversation that we're about to have right now. Yeah. I think thinking about like rediscovery, self-discovery, rebirth, and renaissance, it's almost to the point where, it is an essential for me. It is essential to my being and to my growth. And it's not something that I relate to as just a moment in time, but an ongoing process. I create a rebirth really in every situation that I walk into. I'm not limited to meaning whatever situation has had in a previous context. I walk into every facet of my life with a opportunity to be open and to give it new meaning, deeper meaning, more connection.
Extremely, extremely powerful. I can feel it. I wish y'all were in the studio. You would feel it like I feel it.
The vibes are all right.
The vibes are great. But I want to talk about, like you said that it took you a couple years to get there. You've really been feeling it in the last 2 to 3 years. And I just get the sense that many people, specifically Black women, are feeling that renaissance, that rebirth. They're in that rediscovery phase, but they may be feeling stuck. I know I, for one, was certainly feeling stuck. I want to know how you were able to like push past any resistance that you were feeling when you knew it was that time to enter that journey. How did you get there?
I think for a long time I was at war with resistance. And I was thinking that, it was this competition or this battle and something that I needed to overcome. And I realized it was really just something that I needed to surrender to. It was a process of me letting go of the idea that I needed to be attached to anything, especially an outcome or have an expectation. So I think for me, mostly what happened was a mindset shift. So a reframing of the idea of me being stuck, We often think about being stuck as an ending.
Yeah.
And it's really, we put a period there when it really should just be a comma. It's like, it's just this point where you're able to meet yourself, recognize what your needs are, and truly honor yourself in determining which direction are you going to take, because we have all of the options, like, especially as creatives, we make them for ourselves. We make paths that we could go and connections and networks and all these things. But it really just comes down to, I think, truly understanding what is your moral compass, kind of what guides you. And if you can reframe the idea of like that feeling of being stuck as a period or a comma, you know? And I think for me, it has most lately become a comma because I just don't want to have like self-limiting beliefs or prevent myself from opportunity, prevent myself from just an abundance of blessings that will come my way as long as I lean into it. You know? It's leaning into that thing that you're most fearful of or resistant to, where all the most beautiful experiences exist, really, you know? Just leaning into that fear. And I think just truly knowing. I think there's something to be said about knowing.
Yeah.
You know, knowing yourself, knowing whatever it is that you believe in will truly come into fruition if you like dedicate yourself to that thing. You be devoted to that thing. Yeah.
That's
just
beautiful.
Pushing past the resistance.
There's nothing like pushing past it, because typically you've never done it before.
Yeah.
You've never approached that problem. You've maybe have hit that period multiple times, but you haven't gotten to the other side of that comma, you know?
Yeah.
So part of it comes down to honestly just doing it. One thing I'm going to challenge you and challenge myself is to ground this conversation with examples and with real things, real tangible things that have happened in your life that people can try to relate with. While you ponder, I can share one example for myself.
Yeah.
I think for me, a lot of it has came down. I have one example with my career. I started my career in big tech sales at a big tech company, making a decent living, very well living. But I knew I wanted to do something different. I knew I wanted to do something in the social impact space, but that was going to require that I would have to make less money. I would have to sacrifice. And I felt like, man, I had worked so hard to get to this space, to be able to make this amount of money. Why should I take 5 steps back to acquire and to build up these new skills for me to enter into this new space? But I knew deep down, like you said, that knowing, I knew deep down that that's what I had to do.
Yeah.
And fortunately, I call it a lot of beep beeps. I heard a lot of beep beeps. I saw a lot of visual things that made it very clear that this had to be my next role. So fortunately, I saw something posted online, a position that I found very interesting. And it just so happened that the recruiter for the role was a childhood friend of mine.
Oh, amazing.
And it aligned so easily. And I thank God for that. And you'll find out that typically when you give yourself that permission to move forward, things will be in place. It won't be as hard as you think it is. You just have to give yourself permission.
Yes.
So would appreciate you grounding what you said in an example for my audience.
You know, I love what you said about permission. I think often it's lost on us that we can give ourselves permission. We're not children, you know, we don't need to seek out permission from parents or from our significant others or even other people. And what does that look like? Validation, right? We don't need to do that. It's just unnecessary. We can give ourselves permission. And I feel that trauma and pains and resistance, I feel that more than anything, resistance will propel you if you let it. You know, if you lean into it, it will take you to the next level. So my example is, I was a nurse. I worked as a nurse for 10 years, and I was in the ER. I was burned out, and I became a nurse practitioner so that I could have work-life balance. And it was at that time when I married my passion for beauty with my skill set in nursing. And I began to work at medical aesthetics, cosmetic surgery, plastic surgery. And I was doing that. And it didn't feel right. It didn't feel good in my heart. And I knew, I had a knowing that I was not aligned to carry out that message. And the message that traditional Western medicine was teaching people was that if you didn't love yourself, then okay, we have a prescription and an injection that can fix it all. And you can look like that filter, you know? And I knew in my heart that that was not a mission that I was willing to get behind and stand behind. And I knew that I had to take a risk and I had to walk away from that job security, that role, that position of authority. And I was called, I had a knowing in my heart and a calling on my life that I had to answer if I wanted to truly live in just the most enjoyable freedom. And what changed was through my creative entrepreneurship, I started to recognize that freedom no longer looked like job security. It no longer looked like financial security. It looked like me being able to cultivate connection, create impact in my community, gain friendships and relationships like this. And I had to lean into that resistance, right? To want that job, that paycheck, those accolades, that degree that, afforded me this career. I had to lean into just resisting those things and carving out a space for myself, because at the end of the day, success for me is not those things. It's not those tangible things. It's the intangible. It is the connections. It is the lessons in life that I'm able to fully experience as my full self, and not as not limited to just the job that I showed up and did. So I think pretty similarly to you, it was the pivot from answering the call to really lean into my creative endeavors without the security of them. There's that part.
Yes.
And
it's hard to have both.
It is.
At the beginning. Once you're when you're going from that period to that comma, it's kind of hard. Yeah. It's going to be hard to have both.
It's incredibly hard.
Yes.
But it can be done.
It can be done.
It can be done.
You are a living testimony to the fact that it can be done. It can be. So I now want to talk about shame. I feel like a lot of people, not just creatives, but specifically creatives too, deal with a lot of shame throughout their creative journey. People these days don't even want to call themselves creatives. Specifically, my audience, I know there's a number of y'all that are multifaceted, that maybe have a, first-gen background, come from West African backgrounds, immigrant backgrounds. And a number of my friends are some of the most creative people I know, but they don't call themselves creative because they're a nurse practitioner, they're an engineer, they're a teacher, but on the side, they're doing all of these incredible things. And so they don't want to step into that light as a creative and call themselves that because of the shame that they feel of perhaps holding on to the thing that they know they don't want to be doing. So how have you dealt with shame, and what advice do you have for people to overcome it?
Yeah, shame is a big one. That's a huge one, because it can play into our lives in so many different contexts. I think it's so important to understand for each individual person how shame shows up for them. This even goes back to maybe some childhood things that are not always at the top of our minds on our day-to-day. So really thinking about, what are some ways in which shame has showed up for you throughout your entire life? Because shame in childhood, might have looked like, oh, I want another. Actually, this was my own experience. I used to love
grounding it.
Yes,
examples.
I'm grounding it.
Yes,
I used to love ice cream sandwiches.
Okay,
was my absolute favorite thing. And I remember at one point, I don't know, I had a bunch of cousins, but one of my cousins would go, "Oh, you want another one? You just had one," And that was an early awareness of shame. That's the earliest shame that I can go back to, where I felt, oh, there's a limit, on how much I should eat, because it might impact the way in which my body grows. So here we are with these super early experiences of body shaming, in the context of someone else pushing that on me. And then me starting to have those same thoughts around, okay, well, now I have to control this so that I don't, gain weight, because being overweight has a negative connotation. And like, who even taught me that, So there is this early childhood formulation around where we develop shame. So I think it's incredibly important for people to really just like sit with yourselves and think about the ways in which you allow shame to still show up in your life. Mm-hmm. Like, what is it from your past experiences that we have not processed that still come up today? And for me, it was really just doing some shadow work and really just diving into my childhood and thinking about all the ways in which I've ever felt embarrassed and shamed. And honestly, acknowledging it and wishing it well. And it's so easier said than done, because that even still shows up for me sometimes today. People will say the simplest, you want 2 appetizers? And I go back to that like ice cream sandwich.
Yeah.
Like, don't do that. However, I'm able to approach that with a more mindful context. I'm able to truly understand who I am and understand why I even want a second appetizer, Mm-hmm. And it's not because it's associated to any type of like body shaming to myself, but I think it's more just because I enjoy variety,
yes.
And like I have afforded myself a life where if I want 2 appetizers, I'm getting 2 appetizers, period. But it took a lot of work around like the ways in which shame showed up for me and the ways in which I would not allow it to show up anymore.
Yeah.
I think that if we don't define ourselves, we don't give these terms meaning to ourselves, then we will fall victim to what society wants you to believe they are. Or people will start to create their own versions of your identity. Mm. So I think, again, it goes back to knowing yourself and knowing what you will allow to be just bestowed on you in regards to a term, that you may or may not even connect with.
Yes.
So,
and we all have examples of those terms. I especially know us first gen children of immigrants have those terms that our parents called us that still stick with us till today. One of those terms for me is my mom used to call me tap water, y'all.
What?
Tap water.
Tell me this.
So, tap water, how it runs in the sink, it's just always running, right?
Yeah.
She said that was my mouth. My mouth is always running like tap water. So she'd be like, Esther, tap water, tap water. And so she told me that when I was, a teenager, even before I was a teenager, and I carried that with me, and I felt like I was always afraid to say too much or to say the wrong thing or to be misunderstood. Because at home, I was saying very simple things, or outside, she'd hear me saying things that was happening within our family, which, as you know, as Nigerians, that's a no-no. What happens in the house stays in the house. Exactly. But it was very innocent things. It wasn't like I was giving out all of the secrets. But I definitely think that scarred me for a while of not wanting to like use my voice.
Yeah, I can
and
see
that's
that.
part of the reason why I started this podcast, was to honor myself and to honor the voice that I have and to be able to share that with others.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the resistance that I have been feeling for years. Like this podcast, I wanted to start it years ago, but
I remember
my voice. She was there. She was there in 2021 when I showed her the docs. And even before that, I wanted to start it. So I feel y'all. Like I really do on this resistance thing, on dealing with the shame of that. I still deal with it till today. But I think the only way that one of the ways you can overcome is to truly push past it. And understand, even when it comes to our parents, they're able to notice those things in you because there's something there. There's something there. And yes, there may be good. And yes, there may be bad. But I feel like as adults, doing the work, going to therapy, doing the shadow work, understanding like, why was this an issue when I was a child? How can this show up now? How can I honor the child that wanted to use her voice?
And look at you, honoring it now.
That was a process, but we got there.
That's absolutely incredible. I think this podcast and you are like the living example of what it looks like to recognize how shame was showing up for you and then transfer that into energy that is a platform for you to show your voice and everybody else's voice too.
Yes.
I think that is amazing. Yeah, that's incredible. You. It's like we use our struggles for triumph.
Yes.
And that takes work. You know, everybody's not able to do that. And I just have such an admiration, you know, for people when they do get to that point, because I'm not saying that people won't be able to do it. They just haven't been able to do it yet.
Yes.
So when they get to that point where they can truly turn that struggle into a victory, like, come on, like, yes. Integrate that.
Claiming it. Yes. Yes. Claiming it. And I can say today that I'm very, very proud of myself for reaching to this point. Mm-hmm. And I know that it'll continue to be a journey. I still deal with like fear of being seen, fear of being perceived, fear of being misunderstood. And I know a lot of it does come from my childhood. Yeah. But a way for me to like overcome those fears is releasing, is being seen, is using my voice, is saying things that probably will get misunderstood, but sharing it anyway and carrying on.
Yeah. I'm proud of you too.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Of course.
And a couple questions that I have. We're nearing the end. But if you want to give like 3 tangible tips for this audience that are feeling stuck within their journey and their creative resistance journey, what are 3 things that you would recommend them to do like tomorrow? Or this week.
Yeah.
Because I know it's a journey, y'all. It's a process. It's not going to happen in 24 hours. But I'm so big on like, okay, so what now?
Like, what now? Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah. I love that. 3 tangible things. I think number 1 is something that I've had to work through recently. And it is be quiet and listen. Like literally just shut up. When you feel this urge to speak about your experience, when you're in a room full of people who are talking about their things, just be quiet and listen. And not so much even listening to what's going on around you, but listening to what's happening within yourself. And I think listening in that way, intrinsically listening to yourself, it allows you to fully discover yourself, to fully hear and feel and see your emotions, how they show up within you, and also gives you the opportunity to decide what do you want to give energy to. So I think first and foremost, just shut up and listen. And I mean that in the most endearing way.
We're a No Wahala podcast, so give it to the people straight.
Yes, we're giving it. Secondly, if you're feeling stuck, I would say reevaluate your circle. Reevaluate the people who are closest to you, because those people typically have the most impact on you. And if you evaluate your circle and you realize that you are leading that circle and you are the most successful in that circle, or the most healed, or the most embraced in your healing journey, because it's never a destination, but if you're that person in your circle, it may be time to reevaluate. Maybe just put yourselves in rooms where you have more opportunity to be a student and you have an opportunity to be challenged. Yeah, so I think just having yourself immersed in a circle that inspires you, that challenges you, and that really like calls you out on your own shit and just forces you to level up, because sometimes, our core group, they will not do that. And we cannot always expect them to, because sometimes, that you just develop this like super loving friendship. Yeah. So I think definitely just having exposures to a different group. And that may be momentarily. That's not to say like, replace all your friends, but just be mindful of the ways in which you are navigating your friend groups. Yeah. And then the very last piece of advice when you're feeling stuck, it's a little similar to navigating different friend groups. And for me, I do this, and it's more in the context of like a cultural shift. So in travel. So if you are the type of person who is creatively inspired by different cultures, different foods, different settings, different climates, architecture, and just all the things that come along with travel, and you have the means and the access to be able to do that, highly recommend travel. And honestly, there's not even like a necessity for means, because even being here in Austin, sometimes you could take a 2-3 hour drive, go to a city that is just you're unfamiliar with, and you can find so much like energy that just energizes you around getting back to that creative flow. So I think absolutely travel, reevaluating your friend groups, and then first and foremost, just being quiet and listening.
Love that. Surprise question for you.
Uh-oh.
What would you call this chapter of your life? And speaking of chapters, what books are you reading now that you would recommend to my audience?
That's a whole podcast in itself, which we will do. What would I call this chapter of my life? The word that is coming to me is exposure. And by exposure, I do not mean exposure in a sense of me being exposed to people, things, events, all of that. I mean me showing up exposed, me getting emotionally naked with myself, allowing myself that depth and that level of exposure to truly see myself, to see myself in ways in which I show up and I don't, and to just expose and annihilate the most difficult, misaligned parts of myself so that I can truly walk into a purpose life, truly become more disciplined, and truly tap into the highest version of myself. So exposure is what this chapter would be called. And books that I'm reading, I'm always reading, always. I'm the queen of nonfiction, self-help. It is all me. I'm currently reading Inner Engineering by Sadhguru. I'm actually finishing that book. I absolutely admire Sadhguru. I have a book that I recommend every person to read. It is about self-sabotage and the ways in which you can move through that. And I think, especially as a creative, we easily fall into that pattern of imposter syndrome, and, you know, just believing or thinking that we're stuck and we're not able to move past into our best self. So we start self-sabotaging. But it's called The Mountain Is You by Brianna Wiest. Absolutely life-changing book.
Amazing book.
Yeah. So that one is just one of my all-time faves. I'm finishing Inner Engineering. I also read every morning another Brianna Wiest book, The Pivot Year. So it is a daily like mantra book, and every day there's a different like passage. I really enjoy that one. And I'm on audiobook. I'm listening to The Creative Act by Rubin.
Yes.
That is a phenomenal book. I think he set out for that book to be just more about like the process of like music and writing and like artistry. And it ends up being a book about being and like how to really cultivate this sense of self-awareness and just show up as the best version of you. So got that one on audiobook. And
you got the list, y'all.
Yeah, I got the list.
It's going to be in the show notes.
And I need a new book, actually. I have a library at home full of books, but I'm interested in having a book recommendation. So I'm excited to see, you know, what the listeners also might be able to recommend.
Absolutely. We'll drop that as a question.
Yes.
And y'all can answer. How can people stay in contact with you, find you, connect with you?
Yes. I believe that the most authentic connections happen naturally and organically. So, you know, if we are ever in the same path in the universe, like, please reach out. But in the digital universe, I'm on social media. My personal social media is Shauntavia. It is Shauntavia. And my company's Instagram is Element Skin, and also Process with Sensory.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Shauntavia, for spending this afternoon with me. I've really enjoyed our conversation. I hope that y'all enjoy this as well. And this has been the For My People podcast. Until next time.